शुरू कर अस्सलामु अलैकुम व रहमतुल्लाहि व बरकातुहू नहमदुहु व नुसल्ली अला रसूलिहिल करीम अम्मा बअदु फ़अऊज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम अल्लाहुल्लज़ी खलक़कुम मिन दुअफ़िन सुम्मा जअल मिन बअदि दुअफ़िन क़ुव्वह सुम्मा जअल मिन बअदि क़ुव्वतिन दुअफ़न व शैबा यख़्लुक़ु मा यशाअ व हुवल अलीमुल क़दीर सदक़ल्लाहुल मौलानाल अज़ीम। Dearest young brothers and sisters, children of this community, today's workshop is to understand stepping into adulthood. Before we do this, perhaps the reason for this workshop that both our respectful imams have gone to some task to establish and organize this workshop. And that is, you are the future of Dundee. You may be very young at the moment, but you are the future. You are the future leaders. You are the future workers. You are the future of Dundee. And you may not know at this moment in time the history of this center, but its foundation was laid by none other than Hazrat Aqdas Maulana Yusuf Mutala Sahab Rahmatullahi Alayhi, and a concerned group of individuals led by Haji Ukai Sahab Rahmatullahi Alayhi. And their concern was that any child growing up, Muslim child growing up, has the opportunity to maintain and safeguard their Muslim identity. And part of looking after your Muslim identity is to understand the different challenges that you will be faced as you grow up. And those challenges are becoming more and more difficult to address. So today's session, and I'm going to be talking in broad terms, inshallah, will be followed by a question and answer session. We have quite a few scholars sat here. Collectively, we will try and address your questions. If you do have any questions that you are feeling embarrassed and ashamed to ask in front of your peers and groups of youngsters, then you can write them or send them to Maulana, and inshallah we will try and address them. Or if you want to speak in private, then you can make an appointment to see Maulana at any time after today. Inshallah, we will stop for Asr Salah, and after Asr Salah, we will carry on to go through the presentation and address any questions that you may have. So what I'm going to try and do in broad strokes, young man, can I have your attention, please? Jazakallah. Let me just explain to you one rule when I speak. That's I make the rules. So please, can I have your undivided attention? And if I see anybody speaking up, I will call you out. Jazakallah. If you have a question, then please raise your hand. Right. The idea is to understand, as from an Islamic perspective, as a child goes through being an infant to being a shab, in the Arabic language, a young person, what changes happen? How can we understand these changes from an Islamic perspective? The young person, Muslim or non-Muslim, will be going through physical changes, emotional changes. And we need to understand these changes in the psychology of this young person and in the physicality of the young person, what bodily changes will be happening, what thinking process changes will be happening, so that you can safeguard your Muslim identity. And it is important that you understand this as you move through the period going into adulthood, because, as I said earlier on, this community is banking on you, all the boys and girls, because you are the future. Some of you may not be living in Dundee after 15, 20 years, but that's your choice. But a lot of you will be. And the idea is from the elders that you safeguard your Iman. And in order to do this, we need to understand a very important phase of your life. The Quran says, Allah Rabbul Alameen created you out of weakness. You were weak. Your initial stages, you were dependent on your mother, your father, the family circle around you. Now that you are growing up, you're beginning to have ideas that you're independent. You do not need anybody. So we need to understand the importance of handling that stage of your life, which will be part of bodily changes for both boys and girls, and also psychological changes. And Islam takes a very compassionate view on this, because Islam cares for mankind, and as a result of this, it has provided guidance. And as you move from your infant into your young adulthood, we need to understand it top down. In schools, what you will be taught is bottom up, that you matter. What is happening to you? Islam is top down. First and foremost is your relationship with Allah. All of the world is looked at from that perspective. So even if your parents were to say something, but that is contradictory to what Allah is saying, Allah's word comes first. That's top down. Your relationship with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, please say sallallahu alaihi wasallam when the Prophet's name is mentioned. That is paramount. So in whatever you do, whatever you think, your first thought should be, will this please my Creator? Will this please my Prophet? Alayhi salatu wasalam. Then comes you have your individual personal well-being is important in Islam. So your bodily health, your physical health, your spiritual health, your progress in both your madrasa learning, your Islamic knowledge learning, so that you are able to carry out your duties that you need to do. Also your social ties with your family, your brother, your sister, your uncle, your aunt, your granddad, your grandparents, etc., your nephews, your nieces, your cousins. That is the social angle, your family angle, your community angle. Islam doesn't leave the person as an individual. This individual is part of a smaller group, the family, and a larger group, the community. But you're also living in Dundee, in Scotland, and you are connected nowadays through your phones, etc., with the wider world. So you have a relationship with your Creator, with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and also the wider world. So Allah Rabbul Alameen and His Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam has taught us in the Quran and in the Hadith that you need to be a good person when you stand up before your Creator, and you also need to be a useful person to the wider society. And that's what you need to make dua for that Allah Rabbul Alameen make you, inshallah, better for yourself and for the wider world. And all of this needs to be done with your identity in mind, that you are a Muslim end of the day. And as part of a Muslim, what are the values you stand by? And all of this, I'm going to explain to you one word that's called intersectionality. Intersectionality means different things coming together at the same time. You're a Muslim, your relationship with Allah matters, your relationship with the Prophet ﷺ matters, with your parents, with your siblings. And for you to be a good Muslim and to also be beneficial to everybody else. There's a lot of things are happening at the same time. So what is adulthood? As you move from your childhood or your infancy into the adulthood, a lot of things change. You become, from an Islamic perspective, you now become responsible. That's basically, you're accountable now. For any good deeds, you get the reward. Any bad deeds, you get the sins. So you now become a subject, what we call in Arabic language, mukallaf. You're accountable now for your own deeds. So if you are telling your parents at home you're fasting, and then going to school and not fast, you're eating, the sin upon that is upon you as you enter adulthood. Because you are now liable to perform salah 5 times a day. If you had that amount of wealth where you have to give zakat, then you would be responsible yourself to give the zakat to the poor. If you have the monies to go for Hajj, then Hajj would become an obligation upon you, because you've now reached the age of puberty, you have become accountable, you have become a subject of Islamic laws, you are mukallaf. If you reach the age of adulthood, fasting becomes an obligation upon you. So all of those things now become an obligation upon you. That's the first thing. The other thing, the passage into adulthood also, and we will discuss the bodily changes in the next few slides. But as you become an adult, Islam places a lot of emphasis on that adulthood. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam says that young man who devotes him or herself, that young woman, to Allah and grows up into the next phase of his or her life, devoted to Allah, shabun nasha'a fi ibadatillah, that person will be under the shadow of the throne of Allah on the day of Qiyamah, the day of judgment. A lot of the companions who were growing up before Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, whose names we hear every week in the Jummah khutbah, they were young people. Hazrat Zaid bin Sabit radiallahu ta'ala anhu was a young person. At the age of 18, at the age of 12, in fact, he was the interpreter of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam in the Hebrew language. At the age of 18, he was the Grand Mufti of Madinatul Munawwara. So young people in today's day and age, if somebody was to say at the age of 14, for example, somebody's got 3 A levels, what's the equivalent of A levels, Maulana, in Scotland? Highest. Somebody had 3 at the age of 14 of them. This would be unheard of. But this is why there's a lot of emphasis. A lot of the companions at a young age were relaying hadith. And this is why the young age is very important. You make or you break. And that's why Islam has emphasized a lot to protect your young age. That, as the Quran is saying, from the weakness stage when you were dependent on everybody else, you're now strong. You now think you can take the world on. You're now becoming a bit more big-headed, full of pride, and boastful and looking down on other people, thinking that nobody can tell me anything. That is the age where the companions did the most contribution to Islam. So, first thing we need to understand as we pass into adulthood is we become a subject of Islamic rules and regulations. Salat, if you miss a salat, that is a sin. That salat, that namaz will need to be made up. So from the very beginning, try not to miss a salat. Be conscious of that. And if you want to not miss salat, make sure you don't eat any haram morsel of food. Eat halal. Do not compromise on eating halal. It's very important that you eat halal. A lot of young people now are doing business through the internet. They're buying and selling, or they are very clever actually in establishing a very good business. Islam perspective in this country rules affect at 16 or 18. But in Islam, as soon as you hit the age of bulugh, adulthood, puberty age, you now become responsible. Because as I've already told you, if you've got money, you will have to give zakat on it. Not your parents, not your mother, not your father, you, yourself. So, you may not be able to read the small print, but let's now think about what the hadith tells us about bodily changes that will happen. And I will be careful with my use of language. For the boy, Islam has identified, and those who comment on the hadith have identified certain changes in the human body as that boy moves into adulthood. An old Arab culture was in the Arabian Peninsula that they would put an imama, a turban, on the young man after he would age into adulthood. And they would give him a sword. He is now a man. This could be 12, this could be 13, this could be 11, this could be 14, whatever age it was. That marked the age of going into adulthood. He was now looked at a man. He would be seen as fit to go into battle, given a turban and given a sword. So, facial hair growth or bodily hair growth. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam has said, Ashratum min al fitra. There are 10 things. In one hadith, it says 5, one hadith 7, one hadith 10. Bodily hair growth, Islam has emphasized that needs to be removed for a man except the beard. The mustache can be trimmed. The beard should be left. Oh, full liha. Lihyatun, plural liha, is the hair that grows on your jawbone here. That is, every prophet kept a beard. If you look at any image of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, Jesus, peace be upon him, you will find even in the Christian tradition there's a beard. Every prophet kept a beard. It wasn't in the Arab tradition or the Christian, Jewish, Muslim tradition to not keep a beard. This idea of clean shaven, this developed afterwards, and if you up to scratch with your Roman history, you will find bodily hair was removed. Islam emphasized the beard is part of the man's identity. And the beauty of the man is with the beard. And the beard should be natural, not touched, not trimmed, not shaved. And the only permission was given that Rasulullah gave permission to Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu ta'ala anhu that he used to clench his fist, and any hair that was longer than his one clenched fist, that would be allowed to trim. Otherwise, no. In UK, you will see certain groups of people growing beards. For example, those who are interested in heavy metal music. I am not. But those who are, they grow their beards. Those who are in, what do they call it? Motorbike. क्या कहते हैं? Harley Davidsons, yes. Those who ride the big motorbikes, the Harley Davidsons, you will find they will keep beards. That's a group identity. Where is the value of that beard coming from? You will equally find, I forget the reference at the moment, in the Old Testament reference for Jews and Christians to keep beards. Musa alayhi salam, Isa alayhi salam kept a beard. Rasul alayhi salatu salam, that he says he kept a beard, and by the age of 63, there was about 20, I think, hairs that were white. Even at that age, he was a very fit, healthy person. So the beard is part of. Now, other things, clipping the nails. Maulana will teach you the way to you clip the nails. Other bodily hair is to be shaven, except the beard. That is part of the human identity, Muslim identity. Achha. The other thing that you will have, the voice breaking, that's part and parcel. Your muscle growth, leave your muscles alone. There is no need to have, what do you call it, Malana? Kya kehte hai wo that drink? Protein drink. There's no need to have that. Have your natural fruits, your muscles will grow themselves. Rasul alayhi salatu wassalam engaged in battle himself about 27 times. All these ulama sat here, asked them, did he once visit the gym? You go to Turkey, Istanbul, Maulana there is a globetrotter. He goes to another country, Maulana Fahim Sahib who read the Qira'at, mashallah. He's come specially for Oldham, for this young people's program, because they feel young themselves. Acha bhai. You go to Istanbul Museum at the, what's it called, Istanbul Museum? Topkapi Museum. Topkapi Museum, and there's a museum in Muscat, Oman. And just look at the sword that they say that this was in the time of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, or this was the sword of Ali radiallahu ta'ala anhu. It is heavy. Young people nowadays are struggling to pick up dumbbells. Those guys, Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, hardly had any food. He was fasting most of the time, but amazing strength, 27 battles he engaged himself. So the muscle growth, it's just a false premise that you're going to have all that protein and your muscles are going to be pumping up. That is not the, of course, do exercise, look after yourself. Quran is, Hadith is saying, Sumu tasihhu. If you fast, you will remain healthy. Monday, Thursday, you can fast. At your age, Hazrat Maulana Yusuf Mutala Sahab, Rahmatullah, I used to eat with him. And when he used to sit down, I used to say, eat as much as you want. This is your age to eat. So eat healthy foods. Don't eat processed junk food. Eat healthy. The younger generation is more inclined to eat outside than at home. Your home food is much more healthier. Acha bhai. So muscle growth. As for the females, again, bodily changes will happen. And I'm not going to go into detail. But there again, bodily hair growth is to be removed. The rules are different. Where you have the menstrual cycle, your appas will teach you the rules for that. In that, you have salat, which is not allowed. Fasting of Ramadan will be missed, but that will be made up because that only comes once a year. So rules and regulations for those cycle of days are different. And this is something that our young females will need to be aware of. And again, if you have the monies upon which, or you have that wealth, or you're doing business, or you have that gold, or you have liquid cash upon which zakat will become an obligation, then you are accountable for that zakat, not your parents. It is your responsibility. And Any bodily changes, now you have to also, there's another concept in Islam which we're going to discuss in the next few slides, and that is haya. Al-haya wa shu'batun min al-iman. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam taught us in the hadith that there are 72 concepts associated with Iman, and one of them is al-haya, modesty. Modesty of behavior, modesty of gaze, modesty of interaction, modesty of clothes. And one of the things, if you go back in history, even in Scotland, that women covered themselves. Today, a lady in the Christian church or a lady in the synagogue who have devoted themselves to the worship of Allah Rabbul Alameen, their whole body will be covered up. They will be wearing an abaya and they'll be wearing a hijab. That's nothing new that Islam brought in. It was from the past generations. It was left afterwards. Because if you think about it, if you don't cover your hair, then the people who are trying to, if you do cover your hair, sorry, then people who are trying to sell you shampoos and conditioners, they're going to lose out. The people who are opening hairdressing shops, they're going to lose out. If you're wearing a niqab, then the people who are trying to sell you lipstick, not lipstick. I'm struggling with these makeup terms. Eyelashes, eye mascara, all these powders, all those things, that's millions of dollar industry. Islam has emphasized for the female that there is no need to go for this artificial beauty. Your beauty is from within, and that is of your character. So as part of that, clothing is important for the male and the female, covering those parts of the body that Islam has said to cover. And Islam has said for the female during the fertility years, particularly to cover the body, to maintain the respect within society, to cover at salat time and outside of salat time. Obviously, within the house, when the female is within the family members, there is certain flexibility. So, the Islamic perspective is that as a mark of self-respect, you first of all, as I said, top down, learn to respect yourself in your moments of privacy and in your moments of public life. You cover yourself and you wear those clothes that Allah Rabbul Alameen has commanded you. The idea is to wear loose clothing for a female, not a tight, clinging abaya. That is not the guidance in Islam, it's loose clothing. And the other thing is cleanliness for both male and female. So any impurity that is discharged from the body, Islam teaches us to clean yourself. Clean yourself when you go for a call of nature, and clean yourself when any other impurities is emitted from your body. Because any one drop of urine on your clothes, your salat becomes invalid. Any one drop of any impurity that is discharged from your body, you are impure, your clothes are impure, you cannot stand in front of Creator like that. So your clothes and your personal cleanliness and hygiene is very, very important. And it is equally important to learn the fiqh, the Islamic rules and regulations around that as part of your bodily changes. And I'm sure with part of your madrasa that you're going into, you will be learning all of this. So in a nutshell, hygiene and cleanliness is half of Iman. At-taharatu shatrul Iman. That your personal bodily cleanliness and your cleanliness of your thought process. And we'll come to that in a minute. That was the physical changes. Now let's go through the psychological and emotional changes that you'll be going through. One of the greatest things that you will see perhaps even experiences mood swings. Allah protect us. Anybody who's got a young teenage child in the house, any parent, they will know what I'm talking about. Mood swings because your hormones are going crazy in your body. And as a result of this, you're becoming more aware about yourself. And you're spending more time in front of the mirror as you're becoming more self-conscious. And you also want to be very independent. You do not want anybody to tell you anything. And if anybody does say something to you, it makes you angry. Because you think, I'm independent now. I'm a grown person. I'm an adult. What is the Islamic guidance in that? Well, the Islamic guidance in any challenging situation that anybody will be in is first and foremost remain patient. This is what we call sabr. And have some control and rely on Allah. Make dua that Allah helps you in those situations. Try to access help from your teachers and adults of the family. The other thing is to build resilience. A lot of young people now have got mental health issues. Islam taught us to build a self-resilience. And the way you build self-resilience is salat, is fasting. Psalm fasting is there to build your patience levels, to stop you and protect you from your greed. So seek protection from Allah Rabbul Alameen, be patient, do dua to Allah Rabbul Alameen. And another thing is to practice taking mentorship. Have a mentor in your life, a guide, who will help you, guide you. And that's very, very important. If you think about it, how many of you follow football here, boys? Okay, you've got two hands. So I'm assuming you follow the Scottish League and the English Premier League. Yes? Okay. Now, all those football players will have coaches, and their diets are watched. Their training is watched. Everything is watched to develop those skills for them to be a better player. And the same thing in Islam, you need a coach. Your coach is your Maulana Sahib. Your coach is your mentor. Your coach is your parent. And as I said earlier on, if you have the right food, halal food, you will inshallah stay on the right path. So develop your resilience level. Part of the problem nowadays is young people give up too easily. That is not the Islamic way. And you build your resilience. So that's emotional changes will happen. Psychological changes will happen. Quran says, Ya ayyuhal lazina amanu sta'inu bis sabri was salah. Seek help with being patient and salah. Those are the two qualities that you need to build up in order to develop your resilience, your self-defense mechanisms. The third issue that we need to be careful of as we develop our Islamic identity is peer pressure. Peer pressure, basically, a group of friends, or we're doing this thing, you need to do this thing too. And the young boy or girl will fall for that because they do not want to be picked on, bullied, say, oh, this person is trying to be different. In Islam, as I said earlier on, top down. The question is, whatever you're doing, will my Creator be happy with this? Simple as that. So a lot of young people are getting into substance abuse, drugs. This is the worst thing you can do. It will ruin your life. People do this for temporary happiness. Or they get into vaping. Or they get into other forms of vices and bad actions. Stay away from all of this. This is part and parcel of peer pressure. This happens when you don't value yourself. This is why I said earlier on, self-esteem. Be proud to be a Muslim. You're a Muslim. Be proud to be a Muslim. A lot of young people, I come from Bolton. Only in the last few weeks, I've heard of a few young people who have sadly passed away. Allah bless them, have mercy upon their souls, grant them an exalted status in the hereafter, and grant their parents serenity, patience, and peace of mind. But death can come to anybody at any time. This is why it's important that we think about, am I pleasing my Creator or not? And what is your Muslim identity as you grow up? If you want to be granted a place under Allah's throne, the shadow of His throne on the day of judgment, look after your young age. Look at the examples in the Quran. Young man, attention please. Yusuf alayhi salatu wassalam's story in the Quran. How he protected himself. He had a lady who was trying to entice him for inappropriate behavior. He refused. He stayed in prison because of the allegation against him, and he was eventually exonerated and cleared. He protected himself. Look at the example of the people of the cave, Ashabul Kahf. They were driven away, they went away just to protect their Iman. Yusuf alayhi salam and the people of cave, in the long run, Allah Rabbul Alameen compliments them in the Quran. Look at other examples of young companions, Hazrat Hassan, Hazrat Hussain radiallahu anhuma, Zaid bin Sabit radiallahu anhu, Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, etc. Examples of individuals who, thank you. Examples of individuals who protected their Iman, who became young people, were very gallant, very, very courageous, and stood up for Islam. That is your role. The community needs you. Are you going to stand up to be the leader of the community? So there are many roles. Look at the example of Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha, Fatima radiallahu ta'ala anha, Hazrat Hafsa radiallahu ta'ala anha, Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha. The Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam said, Khuzu nisfa di nikum min hazihil Humayra. Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha was a red, rosy-cheeked lady. And she learned a lot of knowledge from Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam directly as his wife. And Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam said, take half of your knowledge of deen from this rosy-cheeked lady, Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha. This Humayra means red, rosy-cheeked. And this was her sort of nickname. To take from the top 5 narrators of hadith, Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala is one of them. So these are examples. Habiba, who eventually married the Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam, protected her Iman. Allah Rabbul Alameen made her the wife of Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. We have multiple examples of ladies who protected their Iman and the Iman of their children. And the reason why the female has been given such a high status in Islam is because the female's lap is the first madrasa of a child. So all those prophets, when Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu ta'ala was told that somebody's wife has given birth to a girl, then he would say all the prophets were given a birth by a female. That's the role of the female in itself. Allah Rabbul Alameen has granted at every step when she is born, those parents who look after her, nurture her, clothe her, feed her, educate her, until the day she gets married, that is their ticket to paradise. That husband who looks after his wife, خَيْرُكُمْ خَيْرُكُمْ لِأَهْلِ أَكْمَلُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ إِيمَانًا أَحْسَنُهُمْ خُلُقًا وَأَلْتَفُهُمْ أَهْلًا. That individual was the best mannered individual is the best Muslim. That individual who is the most gentle, kind hearted in interaction with his wife is the best individual. That is his ticket to paradise. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam revolutionized the way females were looked at in Arabian society. So, as part of your Islamic identity, there are plenty examples. The other thing we need to learn is part of being a young person is building relationships and balancing those relationships, your relationship with your creator, Allah Rabbul Alameen. That relationship, which is a halal relationship, not a haram relationship. There is no room in Islam because once you become a Muslim, Allah's rules apply and Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam's rules apply. Plenty of boys and girls here will be playing the games on virtual reality, i.e., your your FIFA games, your other games which you connect with people across the world. In that virtual world that the young people are in, you probably have virtual friends, a virtual identity, a virtual emoji, and a virtual bot, depending on how you are with your IT technology. The one thing is managing your relationship with your creator and your family and your parents. If you want to become somebody in your life, the one thing you need is your parents' du'as. Because those du'as for a child are always accepted. If you disappoint your parents, then the Prophet ﷺ says, your children will disappoint you. If you keep your parents happy, then the Prophet ﷺ says, your children will keep you happy. That is how important it is to take the du'as. I say it again. If you want to become somebody in your life, a person of substance, boy or girl, do not miss out on your parents' du'as. Do not displease them. Azan ho rahi hai. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله Right. The other thing as part of relationship forming is to keep good companionship, good friends. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam says, Al-mar'u ma'a man ahabba. The individual in the hereafter will be with the person who they like. So the companions, Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam's relationship was very, very strong because they wanted to be with Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam all the time. I am saying to you today that each one of you should find some time in your day to say Durush Sharif upon Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. Rabiul Awwal month just went a month or so ago. One of the students of an alim that I know, he sent 3 million Durush Sharif Maulana just in the month of Rabiul Awwal. And he went to school age child, 3 million Maulana, 3 million. And this is a primary school child, 3 million. Once you have this habit of Durush Sharif, Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam's gaze will be upon you. Allah will protect you. To face this is very important that you get into the habit of saying Durush Sharif. It is a very important defense mechanism for you. So choose your friends carefully. Bad friends will lead you into trouble. And also understand those friendships which you can have and those friendships you cannot have. As an adult, there is this idea in Islam, those you can marry and those you cannot marry. And that grouping is decided through family ties. Who is a mahram and who is non-mahram. Mahram means you can't marry them. Islam has said you can't marry them. And there are other groups which Islam has said you can marry them. So your relationship with that there's red lines there. Islam has said don't go near that, it's to protect. And nowadays we also have the issues and trials of social media. In the privacy of bedrooms, young people are getting into all kinds of mischief, either on their phone or through their internet, through social media platforms. I don't need to explain that to you. You're the IT generation and you know social media platforms much better than I do. But whether it's X or whether it's any other social media, TikTok platform or any other platform, there needs to be responsible use of it. Allah is watching. That's why I said top down. Allah should not be disappointed with your behavior. And in that, you have modesty idea, haya. Modesty in your privacy movements. We need to stop. Be modesty after salat and during and before salat. Inshallah, we will stop now, inshallah, for salat, and we will continue, inshallah, and reconvene after salat. This is why Islam advocates and promotes self-respect. That you learn to respect yourself because you are accountable. Every limb of your body is accountable and may testify against you on the day of judgment. So one of the key ideas of Islam is in Arabic haya. Al-haya'u shu'batun min al-iman is a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That modesty is a part of Iman. And we have briefly discussed this before Asr Salat. But modesty is not simply in dress code. There is modesty in behavior, modesty in dress code, modesty in eating, modesty in interaction, modesty in thinking process, modesty in your aspirations, modesty in your eating behavior. Islam advocates the modest behavior in all scenarios. What we just did in Asr Salah is a lesson in modesty. Because once you learn to bow your head in front of Allah Rabbul Alameen and put this forehead onto the ground, that is a training for modesty. And this modesty is important online and offline. In the perils and trials and challenges of the mobile phone, where nearly everybody has a mobile phone. Lads, who amongst you does not have a mobile phone? Consider yourself fortunate. Okay? Part of the new thinking in education is that a child should not have a mobile phone until the secondary age of schooling. Nobody should have a mobile phone until the age of 11. My personal view is different. But this mobile phone, particularly when you're in the private moments, behind closed doors, on your own, in your bedroom, has become one of the greatest challenges for parents. And that is, one of the greatest things is not allowing this child to think for themselves. And a lot of the people who are actually involved in the technology behind these phones, iPads, Surf Pros, laptops, will not give their children these same machines that they create, because they know the damage it can do. So online behaviors should also be modest. Offline behavior should be modest. Your interaction with people should be in a way that is Islamically regulated. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was one of the most modest persons. Hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that the Prophet was so full of self-respect and honor, self-honor, so modest and so humble that it was actually unbelievable. Yet he was one of the bravest individuals around. So one good quality that an individual, boy or girl, is to develop, all of us, is modesty. Physical health and spiritual well-being. Let's start from the outwards going inwards. Islam provides a lot of emphasis on looking after your body, because your body is a trust from Allah. And these bodily parts will testify on the day of judgment. The Quran says, وَتُكَلِّمُنَا أَيْدِيهِمْ, their hands will talk with us. Quran says in the 24th juz, that's when the disbelievers say in the day of judgment, we never disbelieved. Wallahi Rabbina ma kunna mushrikeen. By Allah, we did not disbelieve. Allah Rabbul Alamin says, okay. The mouth will be closed and other bodily parts will begin to speak. The hand, the arm, the ears, the legs, every limb will speak of that sin and action that it did. So your bodily parts are actually CCTV of Allah, and they will testify against the person. So it is in our interest that we do not do anything that will cause us embarrassment on the day of judgment. So maintain physical health. That includes eating well, responsibly eating, avoid outside food a lot, because your body is a trust from Allah. It's an amana. You have to look after it. And that means you can go to the gym, you can health. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam told us to, after our supper, our evening food, at least walk 100 steps. And he would walk, and he had a brisk walk. And I used to walk with Hazrat Rahmatullahi alayhi, and a lot of the students used to walk behind him as well. And young people could not keep up with him. They were out of breath. Look after your body. By all means, you can go to the gym, do your workout, look after your body. But this is with the intention that it is an amana from Allah, and you will get reward for it, inshallah. And that is eating well, eating in balance, exercising, and make sure you sleep. Sometimes children are awake late until night, boys and girls, because they're on their computer, playing on their phones, playing their games, playing on the Xbox, playing video games, playing FIFA games or other forms of games on the machine. And that is the way those games are designed. They are enticing and they are distracting. And they will keep you glued onto that. So be careful and be moderate in your use of that. The other thing is, in Islam, is your personal hygiene. Your personal hygiene includes your oral hygiene, your oral health. So Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam would use the miswak before every salah. If you're brushing your teeth twice a day, this is half of the sunnah. Cleaning, hygiene of your mouth is half of the sunnah. The other half is using the miswak, not the toothbrush. The electronic toothbrush, the other forms of toothbrushes, is not a miswak. It serves and functions to clean your mouth. You visiting the dentist with the intention that my oral hygiene is important, because Islam has stressed that my breath should not be bad, so that the angels are not disturbed when I go for salah, is a reward, but that is half the sunnah. The full sunnah is actually using the miswak itself. Bodily hygiene from ritual impurities. I've already mentioned this. But to re-emphasize, any impurity that comes out of your body, either your wudu will break and you will have to go to a minor ritual washing ritual, which we call wudu, or you will need to bathe. You will need to have a shower, or you need to have a bath. Your whole body needs to be washed. And when that body needs to be washed, the minimum, all the body needs to be washed. And in ladies' case, the hair needs to be unblocked, untied. The plaits need to be unbridled, and that water needs to go through right up to the skull and washed. And water, if you've got makeup on, or if you've got nail polish on, and it is of a type where water is not going through and your wudu breaks, you cannot do wudu with that. Water must go and wash those parts of the body that we need to wash during wudu. And the wudu parts are the same. So it is very important that we wash ourselves or bathe, depending on what type of major or minor impurity we are in. Islam has emphasized a lot on washing. If you remember the COVID rules, one of the biggest rules even nowadays is wash your hands. Wash your hands before food. Now, the sunnah in food is a lot of people wash their hands when they are about to eat. Then they dry them with a towel, with a handkerchief, or with a blow dryer. Leave the wet hand because that wet hand is the sunnah by which you eat. And that wet hand will allow your digestion process to be kicking in and help to digest that food. Because the enzymes will be easily then digestible. So keep your wet hands. That's the sunnah, that you eat with the washed hands and eat with your right hand. This is sunnah. It's if you want to hold something with your left hand, that's a different matter. A lot of people, because they see others eating with left hand. So from a very young age, you will notice even with babies, naturally they hold with their left hand. It's up to the parent to make sure slowly and steadily they become habituated, get into the habit of eating with the right hand. That is another sunnah. So whilst you're eating, you are getting rewarded for this. And purity of water. The water that you use to do wudu or shower must be pure. That is outside hygiene, outside cleanliness. So sunnah to have a bath or shower on at least Friday, Eid days. These are two sunnah times. Even if you're preparing the funeral, you're bathing the deceased person, it is mustahab to do wudu then. Desirable to do wudu. Because you're preparing somebody to stand them in front of their creator. So this outward purity is very, very important. And for outward purity, the water needs to be pure. So all those rules and regulations, what type of water is pure? For me to do wudu with that or bathe with that, any impurity of water, your wudu becomes invalid. Now, the other thing of purity is to keep your limbs pure from disobedience. As I've already explained, your limbs is the CCTV of Allah. They will testify against each and every single one of us. If we don't want to become ashen-faced and be embarrassed by what we did in this life, it's to make sure that our bodily parts are not engaged in disobedience. Other forms of purity is keep your heart pure. Keep your heart pure from jealousy, enmity, bitterness, anger, vices of the heart. Purify that. This is what we call Islamic spirituality. In English language, we call that Sufism, which is the wrong word. In Arabic, we call that tasawwuf. Before, what used to happen, as a child went into adulthood, their parent would take them by a Shaykh. This is my child, nurture him. And that child would then grow up with the values of humility, humbleness, and all these internal things that sometimes people get caught up in, enmity, anger. All these are healed. This is purity of the heart, purity of the thought process. That this brain can be trained to think pure, think in the best interest of community members. Purity of belief. You and I are instructed in Islam to believe in one Allah, believe in a cycle of prophets, beginning with Adam alayhi salatu wasalam and ending with Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam. No compromise on that, non-negotiable. Believe in the hereafter, non-negotiable. That's what we call purity of aqidah, purity of creed. Then just like we have bodily odor, you have spiritual odor. Odor means smell. If somebody is not smelling too good next to you, then you will not like to perform salah next to them. This is why the hadith says, do not eat a raw onion and come to the masjid. Because that raw onion will let out a bad smell, a bad odor from your mouth. Put perfume on. Do not smoke en route to the masjid, because it will cause bad odor to come out, and the angels do not like this. And Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam always loved putting itra on, perfume on. Acha bhai. So just like we can smell bad odor, bad smell of the body, too much sweat, some gifted individuals can also smell the spiritual odor that comes out from people. And this is because this heart is not trained to be pure. That's equally important. And staying away, purifying yourself from whatever distracts from Allah. So your mobile phone is a big distraction. Learn to control it before it controls you. So it's part and parcel of the physical health into adulthood and the spiritual health into adulthood. It's important to understand purity is not just using water and doing wudu. Purity of limbs, purity of belief, purity of thought process, purity of eating process, thinking process, interaction process. One of the other biggest issues nowadays that we need to be aware of going into adulthood is mental health. Islamic salat will give you the strong, stable mental health that you require. Managing anxiety. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam taught us a dua. Allahumma inni a'uzubika min al-hammi wal-huzni. Oh Allah, I seek your protection from anxiety. Basically, when you're feeling a bit nervous. I seek your protection from grief or sadness. Be proud of whatever you are. Be proud to be a Muslim and develop that mental health strongness that you can deal with life, because if Allah is with you, you can deal with anything. There are issues, and Islam recognizes states of mental health, and it has deals with it, and you can speak with your Maulana Sahibs later on. As you move into adulthood, come to the masjid more. Come for salat, come for zikr majlis, come for durush sharif majlis, and I said at least get into the practice of doing minimum 100 durush sharif per day. It will not take you long. The smallest durush sharif is sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That will not take you very long to say. Inshallah, you will develop a closeness with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam through that. Where there is a need for professional help, there are professional Muslim counselors now available who are very good in their own profession, and some are also alim, trained ulama and trained alima who have both knowledge, mashallah. And this is a science within itself. Nowadays it's called neurological divergences, because people think it's a stigma to be called that somebody has a mental health issue. Mental health issues are not a taboo in Islam. They are openly discussed in works of fiqh. The idea of junoon, insanity, the idea of ma'tuh, temporary insanity, or schizophrenia as we call it nowadays, the idea of people being unable to undertake and carry out their own transactions, all of these are discussed in works of fiqh. So mental health issue is very important in Islam, and it needs to be understood as well, that there is support out there for you. And that support to build up your own mental health, salat is very, very important. Try not to miss salat. As-salatu imaduddin is the hadith. Salat is the pillar of deen. Ulama would say that the difference between a believer and a non-believer is salat. That believer who stops 5 times a day to perform salah, and it's not going to take long. And nowadays, alhamdulillah, even in shopping centers, there are prayer spaces, in hospitals, prayer spaces for you to perform. If you work out there, if you work in the city, in London or Edinburgh, wherever, you will find that they will respect you if you respect your own religion. So it's important that you establish a strong connection, because all your strength is coming from Allah. That's why salah is the key. If you go to the gym to build your muscles, you're coming to the masjid, your salat, whether you're reading at home or in the masjid, to develop your spirituality and your spiritual strength, to keep you going when you're challenged. And that is helping you. And when you come after salah, do not go away without making dua. Nowadays people argue, oh, it's bid'ah to do dua after salah. Allahu Akbar. Rasul alayhi salatu wassalam, he taught us do dua after salah. He was asked on one occasion, Ayyud du'a'i asma', which dua is the most heard dua? And he was told that dua which is done in tahajjud salah and after 5 times salah. So make sure you seek from Allah help from all the challenges, desires and temptations. Any human being can fall to any temptation at any time. Any human being. We are human. Anybody can make a mistake. This is why those challenges of desires, number one, we need to recognize them. Number two, Islam is telling us stay away. Number three, as far as gender interaction and relationship is concerned, Allah Rabbul Alamin's Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam taught us, keep your gaze down, i.e. when you interact with the opposite gender, do it very respectfully. Do it what we call today in a very, very professional manner. In fact, the Sahaba were told, when you're interacting with the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, otherwise keep not only your gaze down and lowered, but also speak from behind a screen, behind the parda, behind a veil. This is why in Islam, and by the way, this veil thing is nothing new in European society. If you look at old pictures of Victorian times, you will find that the ladies were covered up. Even 50 years ago, even you may well see some grandmothers nowadays covering their hair. As society became more and more secularized and people had different opinions, the one thing led to another thing. So the first point of interaction, be respectful in your interaction. And there are certain red lines that Islam has established. The first red line is keep your intention pure, keep your gaze pure. The Quran is very explicit about this. And in order to control your desires is advocated fasting and be patient. Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ says, Man istata minkumul ba'ata falyatazawwaj. Ya ma'shar al-shabab, O young people, if you can do nikah, do nikah. If you are unable to do nikah, then fast. Because it will control your desires. It will keep your thought process pure. And even whilst we're on the subject of nikah, it may be a long time away for people, the young people here. But Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam said, when you have a proposal coming and you are happy with the character of that person, boy or girl, and you are happy with the deen of that person, marry that person. Do not establish other factors for why you're going to marry or not marry a person. Make sure deen is the uppermost quality that you're looking for. The biggest thing we start it off with is your concept of responsibility. Once you enter adulthood, whatever age that may well be, nowadays you can't vote until 18. You can't do certain things until you're 16 in normal society. In Islam, soon as you reach the age of bulugh, puberty, maturity, you're adult. You're accountable now. So in the eyes of Islam, you are accountable. You have reached adulthood in your personal life and in your religious life. And you now become a leader. Hadith says all of you are leaders and each one of you will be responsible. And the biggest thing to learn in adulthood is manage your time. Do not waste your time, because every moment you are wasting, you're going to be accountable for it. As we reach the end, and I want to give you some time for questions, you have certain key obligations that you cannot compromise on. And the biggest obligations is your ibadah, your personal relationship with Allah, your taqwa. One angle of it is your ibadah. That is your zakat, that is your hajj, that is your salat, that is your sawm, your fasting. And equally, whilst you go through your education years, establish a balance. Make sure you're eating halal and make sure you're performing salah. And be somebody who is responsible in both your public life and your private life. Finally, your moving into adulthood is a big gift. Because the biggest prize there, if you please your creator, that will be Shabun Nasha'a fi ibadatillah. You will be under the throne of Allah Rabbul Alameen, and there are clear guidelines for you to manage that change in your life. Do dua, trust in Allah, seek the knowledge that you need to know of changes that are happening in your life, and remain connected with your creator and with your community. And inshallah, you will be successful. And the biggest thing that you need in that, and I repeat myself, is the dua of your parents, which is very, very important. In a nutshell, as we move into childhood to adulthood, you become responsible for your own actions now. And slowly and steadily, we have to take one step at a time and inshallah draw strength from Allah to help us all. I'm going to stop here. And Maulana, shall we have a Q&A session? Is there any questions that are already written out? Or you can ask the questions. Or if you want to, if you feel embarrassed to ask the question, ask your Maulana Sahib or your Appa afterwards. Ji bhai.
Any questions, guys? Any questions? Don't be shy.
No questions. Ji, beta. What do you say, Maulana?
What small things can you do on a daily basis can make us special?
MashaAllah, very good question. The question is, what small things can we do to make us a better Muslim? Small things on a daily basis. Number one, do not miss Salat. That's the biggest, it's not a small thing. That's the big thing that we all need to do. So get in a practice of not missing Salat, number one. To strengthen your relationship with Allah, where all your strength is going to come from, read some portion of the Quran. Even if it's a page. A lot of the children come to madrasa between the age of 5 to 13, maybe 5 to 15. After that, close the Quran and don't open it again. Until maybe somebody passes away in their family. That's a big mistake. If you come to the masjid, you will find prayer will become easier for you. So number one, perform salah. Number two, read the Quran. And number three, as I said, at least 100 Durud Sharif per day. And try to increase upon that. And number four, one of the biggest things, small things, do not swear. I notice here in Scotland and in some parts of England, every third word is a swear word. Rasul alayhi salatu wasalam says, I was not sent as a person of abuse. وَلَنْ أُبْعَثْ لَعَانًا. I was not sent to curse individual. The reason why people swear is because they do not have that vocabulary to express that anger at that moment, so they resort to using an abusive term and swear word. Pause. If you're stuck for a word, stop speaking. Pause. And when you come, okay, this is the word I want to say that. There is no harm in pausing. So please do not swear and use abusive terms. And if somebody is swearing, tell them, don't swear. This tongue is accountable to Allah. Ji bhai, good question, beta. Ji, ji beta.
Getting married while they're in education, someone you like, and they're also interested in you, and they might be younger than you, but while in education, getting married.
Getting married during education. Are we talking about college years or university years?
University.
Okay. And younger, what does that mean?
Younger than you, younger than the person.
Where is that person in the younger? How young?
Uni student, younger than
A uni student, over 18 basically. So legally an adult. Number one, as far as marriage is concerned, that is a family matter and parental decisions are very important. Whilst Islam has given a mature individual the right to marry, but it is also the coming together of two families. Therefore, the happiness of both families is very important. Secondly, whilst you're going through an education cycle and you're wanting to marry, marriage is a commitment. And at that young and tender age, it's quite emotional as well, that age. Therefore, whether you're making the right decision or not needs to be supported by what is the family and elders are saying. Are the parents happy here or not? And further, how are you going to be supporting yourself? It's the husband's responsibility, not the wife's. How are we going to upkeep ourselves, feed ourselves? That's the husband's responsibility. Whilst Sharia will say there is no restriction in your choice to marry or not to marry, but there are other factors that need to be considered. And if you are in taking that step, going to be incurring your parental anger, then the young people need to think very, very carefully. If that scenario is going to lead into sin, then the parents need to think very carefully. So without knowing the subtleties of the situation, and sometimes young people exploit that situation to give their parents a different view than to what actually it is. So there isn't a black and white answer here, sister. And the other thing is at that young age, the research in America that I'm aware of, that people are getting married at a very young age in the education years, as you've just pointed out, and then they're equally getting divorced by the time they've got their degree. Is that what we want? Because it's all emotionally led rather than looking at societal factors as well. Because it's you marry once in your life, most people, and it's a very important decision of your life. And I know what it feels like to give my daughter away. So for the parent, it can be heart-wrenching as well. So a lot of factors This is why I'm saying mature your thinking as well. Ji. Ji.
Related to marriage, there were a few questions that came in from before about relationships before marriage. So many are asking why is it haram and why we can't date and things like that. Very common out here.
Okay. Just because something is common, number one, we need to get out of this cycle of looking for an answer that appeals to our intellect. We, as all Muslims, when we open the Quran, it says, "Zalikal kitabu la rayba fi." This is a book within which there is no doubt. Allazina yu'minuna bil ghaib, those who believe in the unseen. That's what we signed up for. Now, once we've signed up for that, if Allah has said, that should be enough for us. If the Prophet has said, that should be enough for us. But we are looking outside factors because outside people are saying, well, if I want to do it, it's my body, I want to do what I want with it. It's my time, I can do. Islam has said no. The reason why it says no, the Quran says, وَمَن يَتَعَدَّ حُدُودَ اللَّهِ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْعَادُونَ. This is what the talk is going to be tonight after Isha, inshallah, about. Family life in Islam. And having a responsible marital relationship with someone is not a lifestyle choice. It's a key principle of Islam. And before marriage, during marriage, after marriage, the rules are the same. If you want any form of relationship with the opposite gender, it has to be through nikah. And the reason for this is you become responsible for who you are marrying. Both husband and wife become responsible for who they are marrying. Number one. Number two, there is protection of the family line here. If there is any child pre-nikah, post-nikah extramarital, or post-divorce without nikah, whose is that child? Who's taking responsibility for it? If there is a child. Now in Islam, that nikah is important because the family line needs to be protected. Whose son are you? Everybody has the right to know who's my father. And I can give you loads of examples in today's day and age where this is not happening. Because two big mas'alas are related with that, who is the father, and why nikah is so important. And why Islam has said no relationship without nikah. And that is number one mas'ala to know who your father is who you can marry and who you can't marry. Number one. Who you can lower the parda, the niqab or the hijab before and who you can't. And that's part of the first masla. The second important masla is who you can inherit and who you cannot inherit. You have, in Islam, you have a birthright inheritance right. Whoever your father is, whoever your mother is. So before that is not. Imagine if all of that happened, how would we know whose child is who? Who can marry who? Look at the societies outside and you will realize. This is a masjid, and out of respect for the masjid, I will not want to share some of the stories that I'm aware of. This is why no dating in Islam, no compromise, non-negotiable. Even where a spouse or a child, or I should say a young adult is introduced to a young female, that is happening under certain conditions. And there is no premarital relationship allowed, only through nikah, because the society is founded on family unit. Just like one cell of your body becomes malignant, bad, your whole body is at risk. One family becomes malignant, bad, the whole society, community is at risk. So any type of, whilst we're on the subject, relationship that Islam is not allowed, not allowed. Including Islam does not acknowledge nikah between two same genders. Society may acknowledge that as a civil marriage, that's up to society. That's the legal language. Islam does not acknowledge nikah between man, man, woman, woman. Does not acknowledge it. Only relationship is allowed, as the Quran says, Islam, Allah created man and woman, And Allah has created, given the right as a sign. Look at the words of the Quran. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ أَنْ خَلَقَ لَكُم مِّنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. Allah Rabbul Alameen, from amongst His sign is that He has created from you pairs. And He has created love and compassion between you. Where did that love come from? The one nikah is Allah. So the other thing in Islam is your marriage and your right to marry is that Allah recognizes every human being has certain carnal desires within them that need to be fulfilled, and they need to be fulfilled in a mature, responsible manner. If people are simply going to be guided by their carnal desires without any responsibility, this is following the way of the shaitan. So therefore it's not allowed. Whether we call that dating, whether we call that internet connection and talking, whether we call that extramarital, or whether we call that without any nikah, simply not allowed. Any further questions, Maulana? Ji beta.
So my question is still on the topic of love and marriage, and the question is that, as we know, back when it was my parents and their parents, in my culture, it's very common for people to have arranged marriages. So, like, the boy and girl would not know each other until the nikah. And afterwards, in my own family as well, I've seen, cases of where they've married the wrong man and he beats them and everything. So, I was just wondering if it's possible for love before marriage, and not in dating, but to get to know the person so that you know who you're marrying and you don't end up with someone that's abusive or you don't like.
Acha. Good question, beta. Number one. Islam has not, let's deal with this abusive stuff first. Islam has not given license to be abusive in marriage. If the man is doing this, that means there is some weak connection between that man and the Creator. The Prophet ﷺ told off and scorned at Anjasha radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who said that he had beaten his wife. Told him off. The Islam does not give the license for domestic abuse. In fact, it's from both sides nowadays. Man on woman and woman on man. Either way, it's simply not allowed. That relationship, the Quran describes full of love and compassion. Where you fail is because your relationship with Allah is failing. You've not understood what your role is in that marriage. To use that as an excuse to become lovey-dovey before you have your nikah and become a lovely, lavla couple is not allowed in Islam. How would you get to know the person without what is called dating? There's no concept in Islam of dating. None at all. The issue of compatibility, which you are alluding to, this is for the parents to decide. And by the way, arranged marriages are part of UK culture for a very recent time as well. As society became more secularized, the question became, where did you meet, rather than who arranged your marriage. So these things happen, and it's up to parents then to take the mature, responsible decisions with their adult children. But there is no license in Islam to meet like this, because it can equally not happen. So after 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 2 months or 2 meetings, you can say, he is not for me, she is not for me. So what about that sin that's been happening? And Allah knows what's happened. So for Islam, that's why I say modesty is a big thing. That's why seeking help from Allah is a big thing. For the man to know and the woman to know what are her rights, what are his rights. And in Malaysia, for example, the imams would not perform nikah until both the groom-to-be and the bride-to-be go through a 2-week intensive course on marriage. I have a Sudanese imam friend in London. He himself and his wife would guide the bride-to-be, and he himself coaches and trains, I should say, mentors the groom-to-be a couple of weeks before the marriage, and only then when they are satisfied the nikah will happen. Because it's a huge responsibility in Islam. It's because when it's taken lightly, these things happen. And compatibility is a big thing. I agree with you. Domestic abuse, non-starter, not allowed. All of these things. The hadith says, إِذَا جَاءَكُم مَن يُرْدِيكَ إِذَا جَاءَكَ مَن يُرْدِيكَ دِينُهُ وَخُلُقُهُ فَزَوِّجُهُ. That when you're happy with deen of somebody, his akhlaq, his behavior of somebody, then that's a good person to marry. Don't look at the wealth. Don't pay too much attention to wealth. Somebody can be beautiful here, not so beautiful here. And beauty is in the eye of the beholder. So I hope that answers your question. We need to get out of this mindset of this is what outside world is doing. A lot of people are doing it, therefore I can do it. We can only do what Quran and Hadith is telling us to do. Ji bhai. Good question, beta. Ji Maulana sir, you're not allowed to ask questions. You're trained for it. You'll be answering questions.
Some students have asked previously, how do we maintain modesty and respectful gender interaction within a classroom setting, for example, the sitting next to a girl in college, school, etc.
Ask this. If the question is very good question actually. How do you maintain your modest gaze, do you mean? Or modesty in interaction? If you're in a classroom scenario and you have a female, number one, as I said to you earlier on, patience and reliance on Allah. You are developing your spiritual defense system here. This can happen in any scenario. And if there is respect in your eyes for a female, and inshallah Allah Rabbul Alamin will protect you. But if your thinking process is corrupted, then your eyes, visual side will be corrupted, and then your heart will become corrupted. And one of the biggest thing to keep that pure is halal food. The hadith is saying that. Make sure you're eating halal food. That has a big bearing on all of this thing. And equally from the female side. Ji. Maulana, you promised us a barbecue. Is there one? Is ready? Achha. Any more questions, bhai? Ji beta. All the questions from this side are from marriage, mashallah.
Like that son father has to ask that girl.
Maulana, please, I can't listen to the question.
So, say you were trying not to get married, right? That son's father has to ask that father if he can marry the girl. What happens if that girl's father passes away and how does he get married to the
Go.
If the wali passes away, and how does the man can approach?
Somebody else in the family, another adult of the family, uncle. It's the system in Islam. If there's not one wali, as Maulana said, the guardian, if father's not there, eldest brother, uncle. Ji. Girls, all your marital lovey-dovey question, ask the appas. Okay.
Any questions? Not school, how to stay, anything, any issues you facing in school. You want some advice? Any changes to the
Acha bhai, one comment. I'm very happy to see, mashallah, this is my takeaway lesson, that you're asking openly the questions that you are thinking about. And it's important to do this, that you have the forum and the platform to ask, whether you ask Maulana Sahab or your Appa teacher, but do ask, please. It's important that you ask. Ji bhai Maulana Sahab, shall we conclude? Maulana, you asking a question or taking a video?
Any more from this side? No?
हो गया चलो Let's have a small dua. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على النبي الكريم صلاة تنجينا بها من جميع الأحوال والآفات وتقضي لنا بها جميع الحاجات وتطهرنا بها من جميع السيئات وترفعنا بها عندك أعلى الدرجات وتبلغنا بها أقصى الغايات من جميع الخيرات في الحياة وبعد الممات إنك على كل شيء قدير. Allah Rabbul Alamin, we are gathered here for this important session and workshop on transitioning in from childhood into adulthood. Allah Rabbul Alameen, accept this gathering of ours, accept every single individual who's participated, who has been working in the background to make sure that it goes ahead in whichever way they were helping. Allah Rabbul Alameen, grant these young people serenity in their lives, peace of mind from every anxiety, every grief, every sadness that may befall upon them. Grant them this shield of protection of taqwa to deal with the challenges of their life. Grant them every success in their academic schooling, college and university life, and grant them success in their social lives, and give them the partners that will bring them coolness to their eyes and coolness and happiness to their parents' eyes. Give them children who become mature, responsible citizens who can contribute to the welfare of society at large. Grant them every happiness. Give them the strength of Iman to deal with the challenges of life, and give them those individuals who can address their concerns of life. Safeguard their Iman, safeguard their relationship with you, Allah, safeguard their relationship with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and keep them steadfast and their generations to come steadfast upon Iman, so that we can all once again gather in Jannatul Firdaus, in the higher echelons of Jannatul Firdaus. Allah, we plead and ask every good thing that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked for, and we seek your protection from every thing that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam sought protection from. Allah Rabbul Alameen, accept our humble du'as. ربنا تقبل منا إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.